A child is born in South Central Los Angeles who will one day force America to listen to voices it tried to silence. But before Ice Cube became the architect of gangsta rap, before he shattered Hollywood's expectations, before he built a $160 million empire from nothing, he was a 12-year-old boy standing at a funeral, watching his sister's casket being carried away, feeling something inside him die that would never fully heal. This is the story of a man who turned grief into genius, who walked away from millions on principle, who lost his closest brother before they could make peace, and who, at 56, still carries wounds that fame and fortune could never touch. What you're about to discover isn't just the rise of a legend, it's the price he paid for every victory, and why some storms never truly pass. But first, hit that like button, because this story deserves to be heard. South Central Los Angeles in the 1,970 seconds wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a testing ground for survival. Ice Cube grew up as O'Shea Jackson in Westmont, where his father Hosea worked the grounds at UCLA, coming home with sun-weathered hands and tired eyes. His mother Doris guarded her children with the fierce protectiveness of a woman who understood the streets could swallow them whole. Money was tight, dinner conversations were quiet, and outside, sirens sang their nightly lullaby. But inside that small house lived something else: creativity. His family tree included artists like Del the Funky Homo Sapien. Music threaded through their bloodline like destiny waiting to reveal itself. Then came the day that shattered everything. Ice Cube was 12 when his sister Beverly died. She was barely out of her teens. The details don't matter as much as what it took from him. He watched his mother's knees buckle when she heard the news. Watched his father stare at the floor, searching for solid ground that wasn't there anymore. At the funeral, he stood on the sidewalk with his hands deep in his pockets, silent in a way that doesn't belong to children. Years later, he would admit that losing Beverly changed how he saw every sunrise. Life became fragile, borrowed, temporary. Their home grew colder after that. Grief took a seat at the dinner table and refused to leave. His mother stared out windows at nothing. His father spoke less each day. And Ice Cube moved through the house like a ghost, carrying weight he didn't have words for. At school, laughter felt distant, foreign, like it belonged to a world on the other side of glass he couldn't break through. But around age 14, something found him. Or maybe he found it. A friend challenged him to write some rhymes. What came out surprised everyone, including himself. Words that felt heavier, truer, sharper than anything he'd said out loud. He started writing late into the night, under a dim bulb, turning pain into poetry, memory into music. No teacher taught him how to write. The ache did. Writing wasn't a hobby, it was oxygen. The only place where everything choking him could finally breathe. And from that corner, from those nights soaked in grief and determination, a voice began rising that the world would soon know as Ice Cube. Every morning, he rode a bus from South Central to Taft High School in Woodland Hills, two different worlds separated by a strip of asphalt. At Taft, the floors were polished. The faces looked at him with curiosity or caution. He walked those halls, carrying invisible weight that no one else could see. In 1987, he tried the safe route. Enrolled at Phoenix Institute of Technology to study architectural drafting. He was good at it. Sharp focus, clean lines. But blueprints couldn't rebuild what was broken inside him. After a year, he walked away and returned to Los Angeles with nothing but determination. Around this time, he formed CIA with his cousin Sir Jinx, performing at backyard parties where Dr. Dre kept the night alive behind turntables. Those gatherings were electric, loud, everything his quiet home wasn't. And Dre noticed something. Not just rhythm in Cube's delivery, but weight, precision, truth. At 16, Ice Cube sold Boys N the Hood to Eazy-E for $50. Not much money. But it was the first time someone outside his neighborhood looked at him and saw a voice worth hearing. When N.W.A. formed, Ice Cube became the sharpest pen in the room. In 1988, Straight Outta Compton exploded like a Molotov cocktail thrown at mainstream America. His lyrics didn't entertain, they confronted. They forced the nation to face realities it had spent decades ignoring. But while millions echoed his words, the contracts told a different story. Promises wrapped in handshakes. Paperwork that hid what he deserved. For an album selling millions, he saw $32,000. In 1989, he made the hardest choice of his young life. He walked away from N.W.A. Walked away from brotherhood, from momentum, from the only family outside his blood that understood him. He chose dignity over comfort and stepped into darkness without knowing if there was solid ground on the other side. The early 90 seconds proved why Ice Cube had been the backbone all along. America's Most Wanted in 1990 hit like a national alarm. Death Certificate in 1991 was fearless, unfiltered, too honest for some to swallow. Then The Predator in 1992 sold over 2 million copies, becoming the only album that year to top both pop and R&B charts. At 23, he was shaping national conversation. But greatness is heavy. 16-hour days, sleeping on tour buses, losing his voice between shows, carrying expectations that could break seasoned veterans. And as G-Funk rose, as East Coast waves crashed, as the next generation walked through doors he had shattered, his earthquakes became tremors. Few pains cut deeper than watching a new era move forward without acknowledging who cracked the door open first. Then Hollywood came calling. In 1991, John Singleton saw something raw in his eyes. Boys in the Hood turned him into an actor the industry couldn't dismiss. But acceptance didn't come easy. He entered casting rooms where people saw a rapper before they saw a performer. Friday in 1995 changed everything. A film he wrote and starred in. $3.5 million budget. $28 million at the box office. A cultural phenomenon. Through Cube Vision, he produced Barbershop, Are We There Yet?, 21 Jump Street, hits that made studios hundreds of millions. But the higher he climbed, the thinner the air became. Meetings past midnight, budgets so large they felt like holding dynamite. The fear that one failure could erase years of trust. Then in 2017 came his boldest move, Big3, a professional 3-on-3 basketball league. Critics called it naive, investors called it risky, everyone else called it impossible. He built it anyway. Arenas, athletes, contracts, lawsuits. Every decision came with zeros that could shake a man's foundation. The league burned through millions before making $1. There were nights he stared at spreadsheets knowing failure here wouldn't just cost money, it would cost legacy. But he kept pushing, the same way he pushed through those long bus rides. Through studio nights running past sunrise, through every door that tried to close on him. Today, Ice Cube's net worth sits around $160 million, not because the world made space for him, but because he refused to stop carving space from stone. In 2021, something shifted. Ice Cube quietly stepped away from the film Oh Hell No, turning down a role worth $9 million because he refused to take the vaccine the studio required. He didn't protest, didn't argue, didn't try to change minds. He simply said no and accepted what it would cost. In Hollywood, $9 million isn't just a paycheck. It's momentum, protection, stability that even legends fight to hold on to. But the money wasn't the deepest wound. What followed was subtler, more cruel. Hollywood, the place where he'd poured 3 decades of sweat and reinvention, kept moving forward without him. Not punishing him, not shutting him out, just moving on. He watched younger names fill spaces he once occupied, watched new rules settle like dust, watched opportunities appear in rooms where his name was no longer mentioned first. For a man who built doors where none existed, realizing the world no longer checked if he was standing on the other side cut deeper than any headline. There were days when the phone stayed quiet, when scripts he believed in went to someone else, when meetings ended with polite smiles and unspoken doubts, days when the whisper, "Your time has passed," felt louder than applause ever did. But Ice Cube had met that whisper before. At 19, when he left N.W.A. with nothing but truth, when critics dismissed his solo work, when he stepped into acting, when he launched Big3, every bold move was called a mistake until it wasn't. And though being told you may not be needed at 56 cuts differently. He faced it the same way he faced every storm, with quiet endurance, with refusal to shrink, because Ice Cube never measured his worth by doors others opened, only by the ones he built when they didn't. But there's one door that closed before he could walk through it, and it haunts him still. March 26th, 1995. Eazy-E died at 31. AIDS-related complications, pneumonia that gave almost no time to react. For the world, it was the end of an era in hip-hop. For Ice Cube, it was the loss of a brother he never got to forgive. They had stood shoulder to shoulder in cramped studios with flickering bulbs and buzzing speakers. Two kids from the margins trying to turn raw sound into legacy. Eazy believed in Cube when his name held no weight, bought Boys in the Hood when Cube was just 16. Gave him a shot that changed both their lives. But fame lifted them. Money divided them. Pride silenced them. Contracts twisted intentions. Loyalty turned to tension. Cube walked away in '89, carrying anger he didn't know how to release and regret he didn't know how to name. For 6 years, silence sat between them like a wall neither could climb. Then came the call. Eazy was in the hospital. It was serious. Cube felt 8 years of unspoken words slam into him at once. Every argument, every lyric aimed like a blade, every moment he thought he could fix later. When he finally walked through those hospital doors, everything felt wrong. The sterile brightness, the quiet corridors, the beeping machines. He approached Eazy's room, hand on the cold metal handle, and froze. He couldn't go in. Later, he confessed, "I didn't know what I would have said." On March 26th, Eazy-E was gone, and with him went the last fragile chance to repair what fractured between them. At the funeral, surrounded by cameras and fans, Ice Cube stood with weight no headline could capture. He didn't cry publicly, but those close to him said the regret settled into his chest like something that would never completely loosen. Because some wounds close, and some simply teach. "We were just kids," he said once. Kids trying to make something out of nothing. And maybe that's why the loss cut so deeply. Not because they'd been great together, but because they'd been young together. Hopeful, reckless, believing life would always give them one more chance. Today, when Ice Cube looks back at stages he's ruled, films he's created, the empire he's built, there's always a shadow standing beside him. The memory of a boy with a high-pitched laugh, dark glasses, and a grin that once believed they had forever. The lesson Ice Cube carries: make peace while the door is open, because some doors close without warning, and some goodbyes never wait for words. At 56, Ice Cube stands as living proof of what determination can build. His Marina del Rey mansion overlooks the Grand Canal with floor-to-ceiling glass, floating staircases, rooftop fire pits, and ocean views that look painted at sunrise. His Encino estate spans 8,000 square feet with 7 bedrooms, a recording studio, full gym, basketball court, and resort-style pool. His garage holds nearly 700,000 in vehicles. A pristine 64 Chevy Impala lowrider, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, a Porsche Panamera, a Cadillac Escalade, each one a mile marker of how far he's traveled. But these aren't symbols of excess. They're reminders of survival, reinvention, generational strength. At home, life is quieter now, fuller, steadier. He and Kimberly, his wife since 1992, have raised 5 children. O'Shea Jackson Jr. is a successful actor. Daryl works in music production. Karima and Deja stay private. Sharif pursues creative endeavors. And now there's a grandchild, toys in the living room. A new generation carrying forward what he built. These days, Ice Cube moves through his home with the slow, content rhythm of a man who's learned to enjoy the life he created. He still works, tours, produces, leads, Big 3, but when he comes home, he leaves the public world at the door. Here, he's not an icon. He's a husband whose favorite place is the sofa beside his wife, a father giving advice over backyard barbecues, a grandfather bending down slowly but smiling wider than he did in his youth. Philanthropy runs quietly through his work. He invests in programs widening access for young creators and underserved communities. His message is simple: help others build doors, because not everyone is born in a place where doors exist. Even now, with decades of success behind him, Ice Cube moves with the steady confidence of someone who's earned every inch of his piece. Time has touched him, but instead of softening him, it refined him. There's calmness in his eyes now, clarity in how he speaks, as if he finally understands the world can change around him as much as it wants. The man at the center remains unshaken. So what stays with us from Ice Cube's journey isn't just the music or the movies or the millions. It's the perseverance, the humanity, the way he continues rising even after the world shifts beneath his feet. From a grieving 12-year-old writing in the dark to a cultural architect who forced America to listen. From walking away from N.W.A. with nothing to building a $160 million empire. From losing his sister, his brother, his Hollywood momentum, to standing tall at 56 with a family that grounds him and a legacy that will outlive us all. His story proves that the greatest victories don't always happen under spotlights. Sometimes they happen quietly, at kitchen tables, with people who never stopped believing. If this story moved you, drop a comment below sharing which part resonated most. Hit that like button to honor a legend who never stopped fighting. And subscribe, because we're just getting started, uncovering the untold stories behind the icons who shaped our world. Until next time, keep rising, keep building, and never let anyone tell you your time has passed.